In Kyoto's Gion district, the streets are older than the electric lights that now hang above them. By day, they're filled with the laughter of tourists and the shuffle of geisha on their way to tea houses. But at night, when the rain falls and the paper lanterns sway, some alleys belong to no one living. Tonight's story is about a red lantern and the woman who carries it. Chapter 1. Lanterns in the Spring Rain. The rain in Gion was the quiet kind, thin silver threads falling steady against the dark lacquered wood of the old tea houses. The cobblestone alley glistened under the light of paper lanterns, their warm glow rippling in the shallow puddles. The air was thick with the scent of wet stone, faint incense from a nearby shrine, and the sweet tang of sakura blossoms drifting from the canal. A young apprentice geisha, her white tabi socks damp beneath the lacquered soles of her okubo sandals, hurried down the narrow lane, clutching her folded parasol. The sleeves of her pale pink kimono, patterned with plum blossoms, swayed with her quick steps. Her evening performance had run late, and the hour was edging toward the quiet stillness when Gion's nightlife faded and the old spirits were said to walk. She passed under the low eaves of a wooden machiya, its sliding shoji doors closed tight. Most of the lanterns hanging from the beams were still, their painted calligraphy crisp in the dim light, but one, just ahead, swayed gently, its red paper surface glistening with raindrops. She slowed. The air was calm. Not even the faintest breeze brushed her cheeks, yet the lantern rocked back and forth as though caught in an unseen current. The flame inside wavered, casting shadows that bent and stretched unnaturally along the wet stones. Her gaita clicked once, twice, as she stepped past it. She felt the urge to glance back, but the alley seemed to darken a little at her periphery. At the far end, a soft shape waited near a tea house doorway, a silhouette just tall enough to brush the edge of the eaves. The figure's hand held something small and round. It glowed red. Chapter 2. The Woman by the Doorway. The glow from the paper lantern lit only part of her, the curve of a sleeve, the edge of a collar, the faint shimmer of silk threads in an old-fashioned kimono. The rest of her form was swallowed by the deep shadow beneath the eaves. The apprentice slowed, her sandals slipping slightly on the slick stones. The woman stood utterly still. The lantern held just low enough that the brim of her hairstyle, tall, elaborate, and pinned with old silver kanzashi, hid her face. The fabric of her kimono was darker than the night itself, its hem brushing the rain-darkened street. Gion's alleys were lined with doorways like this, narrow entrances to Ochaya tea houses where only the most favored patrons were welcomed. But this one's Noren curtain was missing, leaving a black mouth of an entrance behind the woman. The sound of the rain seemed to muffle as the apprentice neared, her heartbeat thudding louder in the stillness. She stepped aside to pass, bowing politely as was custom, though she dared not meet the woman's gaze. But when she looked up again, the alley ahead stretched empty, save for the faint sway of another red lantern hanging in the distance. She quickened her pace, relief blooming in her chest, until she rounded the next corner and stopped cold. There she was again. Same doorway, same lantern, same unmoving stance. The apprentice's breath caught. She knew these alleys well, each turn, each back street, and the path she'd taken should have led her away from that building. Yet somehow, the woman was already there, waiting. Chapter 3. The Lantern Lifts. The rain had slowed to a mist, the droplets clinging to her lashes. The apprentice stood frozen, her breath clouding in the cold air. The woman's kimono was clearer now, thick silk embroidered with chrysanthemums and faded gold, the pattern frayed as if it had seen decades of wear. The red lantern's light painted the wet stones at her feet, but her face remained hidden behind it. Slowly, the woman began to raise her arm. The paper lantern lifted inch by inch, its glow climbing the length of her body until it reached the pale oval of her face. The apprentice's stomach tightened. Two deep, empty hollows stared back at her where eyes should have been. Glistening, dark pits that seemed to pull at the light. From their depths, a faint red glow pulsed like embers. Her skin was as smooth and pale as porcelain, but too still, too cold. The corners of her lips curved ever so slightly, but the smile felt wrong, meant for someone else, someone long gone. Behind her, the alley no longer ended at the main street. Instead, it stretched on into darkness, lined with row after row of swaying red lanterns. The sound of the city had vanished. Only the faint hiss of rain remained. The woman took a single step forward. The glow from her empty sockets brightened, and the apprentice felt a chill pass through her, as if the heat in her body were being drawn away. Her knees trembled. The air thickened. The alley smelled faintly of damp earth and old incense. Then came the whisper, low, breathy, curling into her ear, though the woman's lips had not moved. Come. Chapter 4. The Whisper of the Lost. The word seemed to coil inside her skull, vibrating in her bones. The apprentice staggered back, her sandals slipping on the slick cobblestones, but the alley behind her felt no closer to escape. The rows of red lanterns swayed in unison now, their flames flickering as if reacting to some unseen breath. The woman's mouth began to move. No sound came at first, only the faint hiss of rain against stone. Then a whisper so soft it was almost felt rather than heard. Names. She spoke them slowly, each one laced with a strange, mournful cadence. The apprentice recognized some. Geisha and Maiko, who had vanished from Gion over the years, their disappearances whispered about behind closed shoji doors. Others were unfamiliar, but the way they were spoken made her skin prickle, as if the names themselves carried weight. The air turned heavy. The lantern light deepened to a blood-red hue. Around her, the shadows thickened, and something brushed against her sleeve, cold and damp, like fingers fresh from the rain. She spun, but there was no one there. Another touch grazed her ankle, then another on her shoulder. The unseen hands multiplied, sliding over her arms, curling around her wrists, each one feather-light but inescapable. The woman took another step forward, the glow from her hollow eyes growing brighter, spilling over the apprentice's face. The whispers overlapped now, dozens of voices, layered, rushing into her ears until it was no longer words, but a torrent of sound, like rain on 1,000 rooftops. Somewhere in that storm of voices, she heard her own name. And it was getting louder. Chapter 5. The Tale of the Missing Maiko. The apprentice awoke to the sound of temple bells and the smell of tatami. She was lying on the floor of a small tea house, a folded quilt draped over her legs. An elderly woman knelt nearby, pouring tea into a chipped porcelain cup. "You are lucky," the old woman said without looking up. "The lantern lady does not often let go." Her voice was hoarse, shaped by decades of smoke and whispered conversations. She explained that long ago, in the late Meiji era, a young Maiko had been promised to a wealthy patron who suddenly withdrew his favor. The shame and debt forced her out into the rainy streets of Gion, where she vanished into the alleys and was never seen again. They say her spirit returned with a red lantern, the very one she had carried to guide her home that night. Now she wanders after the rain, seeking young women in the narrow streets, leading them down alleys that stretch into places no map records. Those who follow vanish as she once did, becoming names whispered in her endless litany. Some say she is lonely, others that she is jealous, unwilling to let anyone leave the district that abandoned her. The old woman's gaze flicked toward the doorway, where a single red lantern swayed in the morning breeze. "If you see her," she said, "never take the path she lights for you, and never answer when she speaks your name." Outside, the rain had stopped, and sunlight spilled into the streets. But in the reflection of a puddle by the tea-house door, the apprentice swore she saw it, the faint glow of red drifting away into the shadows. Gion's charm lies in its narrow alleys and timeless beauty, but beauty can hide the oldest ghosts. Locals say the lantern lady still walks after the rain, searching for someone to follow her into the places no map records. So if you ever see a red lantern swaying when there's no wind, turn away. And if you hear your name in the rain, don't look back. Kyoto's Gion district is one of Japan's most famous geisha quarters, with history stretching back over 400 years. The narrow streets, wooden machiya townhouses, and paper lanterns are part of its preserved heritage. Folklore often ties spirits to places of strong emotion or tragedy. In Japanese ghost stories, lanterns are sometimes associated with the andon, traditional lamps used to light the way home. When carried by spirits, they can serve as lures, leading the living into danger. Legends of the Lantern Lady echo other Japanese Yurei tales, where female spirits, often betrayed or wronged, wander familiar streets, bound to the site of their death. In Gion, the image of a red lantern in the rain is said to be a warning. Follow it, and you may never return.